What is up, Packer fans, football fans out there, guys, whoever's out there listening, what is up? So in this video, I want to talk about why I think the Detroit Lions Carolina Panthers game is going to be so big for the Packers in their season. But before I do, guys, take a second to subscribe. Okay, so let's get into it. Why do I think that this Carolina Panthers Detroit game is going to be so big for the Packers in their season? Let's get into it. So the Detroit Lions, they're heavily favored going into this game. We all know that. Okay, this is a very talented Detroit Lions team. They seem to have found their identity. They seem to be rolling in a good way. This is a winless Carolina team that seems to be looking for their identity. They're winless. They're 0-4. They're on the road. Guys, what are the chances that the Detroit Lions have 3 consecutive games by double-digit margins? Okay. And how likely is it that the Panthers lose their first 3 road games by double-digit margins? You might be saying, you know what, Jason, if you watched this Detroit Lions team, it's very likely because this is a good Detroit Lions team. This is a not-so-good Carolina Panthers team that seems to be looking for their identity. Guys, I'm here to say that it could potentially be, an upset of a game, and here's why. Okay, so Detroit's not used to being in the limelight. They're not used to being a team that's either favored at home or on the road, but they find themselves in this position currently. Okay, so how are they going to respond? Nobody knows because we haven't seen a Detroit team like this. So time is going to tell how they're going to respond to the pressure, because it is a lot of pressure when you're favored all the time, because you've got teams like an 0-4 Carolina Panthers that have really got nothing to lose. But to try to go off and knock off the Lions, a team that is heavily favored to win the NFC North, but not just win the NFC North, they're favored to just get some wins in the playoffs. That's something that you haven't said when talking about the Detroit Lions. Okay, so that being said, historically, guys, nobody is going to tell me that, you know what, this is the Detroit Lions, baby. This is their year, because historically, this is a team that has had really fast starts, but, they don't do anything with it. So what do I mean by that? Let's take a look. Okay, so the Detroit Lions that have started out 3-1, there's been 23 of those Detroit Lions teams out there that have started 3-1. And they went on to make the playoffs 7 times, which is 30.4% of the time. Guys, that's not a good stat, okay? So the Detroit Lions that start out fast don't necessarily always finish strong, okay? So what about a Detroit Lions team that's started out 4-0? Out of those 6 teams that have started out 4-0 for the Detroit Lions, they went on to make the playoffs 1 time in 2011, which is 16.7% of the time, guys. Those are not strong stats. So what does that tell me? As a Packer fan, that tells me that the Detroit Lions, they find ways to lose. And I get excited about that because, yes, the culture does look different there. And this does look like a different makeup of a Detroit Lions team I'm used to seeing. But until I see differently, until I'm proved otherwise, I'm still going to think that this is a Detroit Lions team that will find ways to lose. Okay, so let's take a look at their schedule and who they played this season. Okay, they started out on the road at Kansas City. That's a good win. When you start out on the road at Kansas City, that's a good win. Okay, so mind you, Kansas City was down some players, some key players, and Patrick Mahomes, his passer rating was 77.5%. So that's not Patrick Mahomes-esque. So that's not, a typical Kansas City Chiefs team. You could contribute that to maybe the defense of the Detroit Lions because they've looked good. The Detroit Lions defenses look good. But as a Packer fans, here's my optimism in that this is the same Detroit Lions teams. They went and played the Seattle Seahawks, a team that they cannot seem to get over the hump with, which tells me that the Detroit Lions are a head case because they can't get over that hump against a team that, honestly, they're better than the Seattle Seahawks, but they lose that game in overtime. And of course, you're not going to win them all. I get that. Then they play the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta Falcons, they've got a really good run team. Okay. Really good run game there. And they only ran the ball 17 times. They're poorly coached. They didn't play up there to their potential there. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a win. So you're going to take it, right? But then they go and they way outperform the Green Bay Packers. So they're 2-point favorites going into Lambeau Field, something that Detroit Lions fans are not used to saying. And they go out there and they answered that call, man. They completely were. The Packers were outcoached, outmatched, outplayed, whatever, you name it. Detroit Lions owned them. And as of right now, everybody's saying, "Hey, man, listen, Detroit Lions are legit. They're gonna win the NFC North." But then, but they go and they're at home versus the Carolina Panthers. Okay, so a winless Carolina Panthers team could mean a dangerous game. Right? It could be the recipe for disaster. Meaning, this is a Detroit Lions team that's good. You know, they've got everybody in the NFL is talking about them. The press is talking about them. So they think they've already won this game. Okay. So my hope is that they've already taken this game for granted. Carolina Panthers, they're trying to find their identity. They could just go in there and just try a bunch of crap, some trickery, whatever, you name it. And they could go in there and upset Detroit at home, a team they're very under, they're not favored at all in this game. So if and I'm not saying they will, but if the Carolina Panthers do come up with a win here, things look all of a sudden very different. Say the Packers win Monday night against the Raiders. Okay. They are 3-2. That means Detroit would be 3-2. That's headed into the bye week for the Packers. Packers get healthier. And then all of a sudden, you've got an NFC North that's tied at the top. So then they go and play a Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, which Mayfield's just been throwing it up there to Evans and Godwin. So that's kind of dangerous, for anybody to play, because they seem to like to play from behind so that they can just air it out. So if Mayfield does catch fire, that is kind of a dangerous Buccaneers team. They're probably going to win that division if Atlanta still can't find, what they're doing there. This is a Super Bowl or bust Baltimore Ravens team. They can be dangerous. They play the Raiders. They play the Chargers, who knows what they look like. The Bears, the Packers on Thanksgiving. Packers hopefully are going to have a lot of people back and healthy. And in the Packers, it looks way different with Aaron Jones there, a healthy Aaron Jones that's playing on all cylinders. He's not rep counted or any of that stuff, or restricted, I should say. Then they play the Saints, the Bears, the Broncos, which by that time, maybe the Broncos have found more their role and identity there. And then you got the divisional game in the Vikings, a talented Cowboys team. And then they end with the Vikings, another divisional game. So guys, here's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that the Lions are going to lose this game to Carolina, but if they do, things look way different in the NFC North. And this all of a sudden becomes a wide open division, and you could have a lot of naysayers and haters out there that all of a sudden are like, you know what, Detroit's not real. They're not for real. And then all of a sudden that has a trickle effect into their culture, into their locker room, into their atmosphere there, which could be disruptive for a younger team with a lot of pressure on its shoulders. This could be a huge game. This Carolina Panthers, go Carolina.